Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of JavaScript Jabber. This week on our panel we have Steve Edwards.
Yo, 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 coming at you, AJ style from just outside Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I was trying to come up with your name and I was looking at Erik. So my brain kind of went, wait. I'm Charles Max Wood from Top End Devs. And this week we have two guests. We have Erik Hanchett.
Hello.
Welcome back. We also have Clare. I didn't get your last name, Clare.
Liguori.
Ooh, cool. Sounds Italian, so you're probably awesome. All right. So
I thought it sounded French, but that's just me.
Could be. Anyway, do you guys want to just introduce yourselves real quick? We've had Erik on before, but Clare, you're new to us, so we want to know how awesome you are.
Sure. I'm Clare. I'm a senior principal engineer at AWS in agentic AI. And I work on all things developers and agents, basically. The Kiro IDE and the Strands open source agent SDK.
Cool.
And I'm Erik. Been on here a few times. Senior developer advocate at AWS. Huge Vue.js fan. That's probably the last few times you may have heard me on this podcast talking about it and all the work I've done in that community and in the JavaScript community. So glad to be here today and talk about some really exciting that we released recently that Clare can talk a lot about, Kiro, which is our new AI IDE.
So a little bit of background before we get started. So we had Erik on a month and a half ago, somewhere in there, I forgot, and found out later that he had been planning to talk about Kiro, but it turned out it wasn't quite ready for release at that time. So we sort of scrambled and talked about other things. We sounded really good, I thought. But now Kiro has been released, and I know I've heard a lot about it on other podcasts, and other blogs and so on, and people have been really raving about it. So we're finally here to talk about it officially and all it can do for us.
So I'm curious. Sometimes it's obvious why people name stuff what they name it, right? It's like, this does email, so we called it email thingy, right? How did you come up with Kiro?
That was a AI-assisted process, actually. It actually means crossroads in Japanese. And so we were looking around for a word that would reflect the sort of new development style that we have now. Our development has changed so much. So we were at a crossroads.
Gotcha. It's funny because I go for walks and I talk to Grok the whole time. So I know how this goes sometimes. It's like, oh, that's a good idea. So do you want to explain what it is and how it works? Maybe how it's different from some other things that it sounds like do the same thing?
Well, Kiro is an AI-powered IDE, like Erik said. But one of the things that makes it different is that we've all been kind of vibe coding for a bit now. And one of the things that we were noticing is that people really struggled to get what they wanted out of vibe coding, especially when it came to more complex tasks. And there was a kind of a aha moment for me and was the reason that we started Kiro, which was, what if developers, instead of saying kind of commands to an AI assistant of how to change their code, what if they just declared what they wanted? What if they defined requirements and then worked with the AI on requirements and how that broke down into individual tasks? And that was really the birth of what we call spec-driven development, which we have dedicated UX around in Kiro. That's really what makes it different. Spec-based development is kind of what it sounds like. You create a specification for what you want. That could be a brand new application. It could be a feature. It could be a massive refactor in your code base. But you go through this process where you define the requirements, the use cases, user stories. You can have the AI generate all of those, because I remember writing these by hand 10, 15 years ago. It wasn't that much fun. And then you go through a process of working through the technical design with the AI and finally what tasks that breaks down to. And then you have a lot of control over steering the actual implementation of those individual tasks. And we've heard from folks that this has enabled them to, at the end of the day, produce much better quality code and actually get to what they wanted, instead of this very frustrating experience with vibe coding we were hearing about, where it's like you go 10 cycles and that it's almost like the AI is not getting what you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've experienced that a little bit. I've been using Cursor and Copilot, depending on what I'm working on. And you talked about it, breaking it down into lists. And it's funny because Cursor will give me these are the things I'm going to do. And then it'll check them off as it goes, right? And yeah, it doesn't always get it right. If it's something simple, probably the vast majority of the time it gets that right. But yeah, the second it gets complicated, it's like, okay, this isn't working. And sometimes I'm still not quite sure what it did or how to fix it. And so I'll ask it to fix it and then it still doesn't work. Yeah, so I get that. It sounds like this is a little bit more in depth than sort of the process of, giving it a single prompt and then having it come up with, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'll be done.
Yeah, and it still starts with a single prompt. But one of the things that I've noticed is that it's really hard for us to describe what's in our head from the get-go, from a blank prompt text input box. And so often what I find is that there's this iterative process of effectively the AI trying to guess what I meant by this simple sentence, and then being able to iterate on that and say, no, that's not exactly what I meant. I actually meant this. Or, oh, that's an interesting idea I didn't even think of. And so that process of creating the spec is really helpful for refining what it is you want. Often, if you go to vibe coding, it's kind of like, when you have an engineer who's a bit fresh and they always jump right to writing the code before actually thinking about the problem. That's kind of the vibe coding experience, is the AI jumps into writing the code before kind of understanding the problem. And so this spec-driven development helps you to kind of make sure you're on the same page and that, everything that's in your head of what you're thinking about the application or the feature is actually out on paper without necessarily having to type it out all yourself. You kind of just go through this iterative process of the AI kind of guesses, writes the spec for you, and then you say, no, that's not exactly what I meant.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit like the process I went through more as a freelancer than really as a full-time employee, where, I'd have the client come to me and say, hey, we want this feature. And then I'd ask questions. Do you want it to do this? Do you want it to do that? Do you want it to look like this? Do you want it to blah, blah, blah? Right. And then there was further iteration once we got going where it was, okay, I have a rough version of this. And then they'd go look at it. Oh, no, this isn't quite what I wanted. And so by the time we're done, yeah, I had a fully fleshed out understanding of what they wanted and could build it. And it sounds like that's what this is doing.
Yeah. And I love that idea of the rough version of it. Is this what you wanted? Because so often we don't know what we want until we actually see it when it comes to application development. And, we've seen across moving from waterfall, where we tried to, have all the requirements ironed out at the beginning, and that never really worked because those were never the actual requirements that you ended up with at the end once you saw the application. We went to agile, where we're attempting to move into sprints, where we have some capability of refining those requirements as we build. But even with something like agile development, it still takes so long to get to something that's working, that you can actually show to a customer, show to a user. So it's going to take multiple months. And one of the powerful things about AI assisted coding is you can get to that tangible result so much faster. You can build entire application. It may not work exactly right. It may not be exactly what you had pictured in your head to begin with, but you can actually play with it. You can touch it, use it, and go back to your requirements and say, oh, actually this part wasn't exactly right. Or, oh, we forgot this. Let's change these a little bit and regenerate. And so that's been really powerful for getting into kind of prototype driven development. And I've found that ends up with a better product at the end of the day, because you are able to really use the product very early on while you're still forming the requirements, really.
Yeah, I'm kind of imagining how this flows. I'm a little curious once it has the spec, if it's something that's a little more complicated. One of the things that I've experienced more with Cursor is that it will go and it will like do the whole job, right? And so I get that it gets done and I'm like, I have a lot of stuff here.
Yeah.
Does it do that, or does it kind of?
So
march through a piece at a time there too.
We call that supervised versus autopilot mode. So sometimes, you just want to get something done, right? You just want a really simple tool and it doesn't need to be exactly right. And I find that autopilot mode is going to be the fastest way. That means exactly what you just said. It's just going to plow through the work. It's going to completely build the entire thing. Supervised mode is where you want to give feedback one step at a time. So in spec mode, what you can do is it generates a task list, similar to what you were saying, that the AI says, here's what I'm going to do. But it will actually stop for your feedback after each individual task. And so you can say, whoa, you are starting off on the wrong foot here. Let's rewind and get this right. And I find that does end up with more of the code that I already wanted because I'm steering it along the way and in between these little individual tasks. I will say that I've noticed AI models really like to do a lot of work. And so what I find is when they generate these spec files, it's following all the software engineering best practices. It's got high unit test coverage. It's got integration tests. It might sometimes say, I'm going to try to deploy this before deciding I'm done. And that's really great if you are building a production app. Sometimes I'm just building a little side project or I'm building a little utility that I just kind of need to get done and I don't need integration tests. So being able to review that list of tasks before it goes off and does a lot more work than I wanted it to do is also really helpful.
Nice.
I feel like it's like an eager intern. It wants to help you so much and do everything for you. And you can definitely be like, no, let's supervise this one at a time.
Yeah.
Let's delete things we don't need. We don't need 3,000 integration tests. I definitely feel
I
like
love
that.
the eager intern analogy. You sent me for coffee and I came back with donuts and sandwiches and
a whole coffee machine.
Did your dry cleaning. So do you use it now or go ahead? Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I was going to say, so in reading through the instructions here and what you were just talking about, it sounds like there's it's like doc writing almost, like you're planning and figuring out, okay, I'm going to do this. How much does it actually write code versus just doing the planning? Is it all of the above? I mean, say, for instance, if you are a design challenged backend engineer like me or a code writer like me who has no design chops whatsoever, and I actually have a project I'm working on that I really would love to do this. Can it do something like come up with at least a somewhat workable UI design based on what you're doing, in terms of page layouts and elements and menu, navbar structure, tables, forms, that kind of stuff as well?
Yeah, it can both write the specs and write the actual code for you. And the technical design step is really helpful for some of the UX as well and kind of the code architecture. So you can say, what front-end framework do you want to use? What kind of component library do you want to use? Compared to, when I first started out in the industry, I was literally writing waterfall requirements documents. What I like is that it's not so much about you writing these documents as they are kind of artifacts for a shared understanding between you and the AI. And so you don't have to actually write any of it. You can keep prompting in Kiro until you have the requirements that you want, or you can, kind of edit them yourself where need be. But it's really helpful in really the whole life cycle of kind of ideation and then design and then actually writing the code.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. I guess I've been working from the assumption that it's as capable as any of the other systems out there, right? So like I said, Cursor and Copilot seem to be able to do the UI stuff just fine because I have the same problem, right? I work almost exclusively on the back end. In fact, for my full-time job, I'm basically building APIs and then somebody else is doing all of the front end work. And so when I'm working on my own projects, I tend to let it do the UI UX stuff and it does fine. I mean, it's not always beautiful or whatever, but the thing is I can more easily then tell it, I want this over here, or hey, this isn't working quite the way I expect. And a lot of times, again, back to the point of you have to see it before you know what you want. Like I'll go in and I'll just do something instinctively, and I didn't tell it I needed that, but then I'm like, oh, I need it so that when I click here, it does this. And so, and it's usually pretty good about that.
Yeah. And you can also give it kind of a napkin diagram of what you want the UI to look like, and it will actually translate that into requirements or design statements. So that's pretty cool as well.
So one thing that I'm wondering, having used, like I said, I've used Cursor and I've used Copilot. I'm working on figuring out how to get Copilot to work with Emacs because I like that a little more than Visual Studio Code. But Cursor's based on VS Code. Is that what you did with Kiro, or is Kiro something else?
It's based on Code OSS, similar to the others in the space, yeah. So it feels very familiar, but we were also able to, for example, with this spec layout, one of our hopes is to a little bit take the focus of the environment away from just the code. So one of the things that I noticed as we were working with Code OSS is it's interesting the way that the colors are, where code is very much the focus. So I use a light mode, and everything in the UI is gray except for the code, which is in white background. And so we were looking at this and thinking, actually, you don't want necessarily the code to be the focus in your IDE. And I think we're not quite there yet. I think our first step is with this kind of dedicated UX around spec-based development, where the focus is on the spec, the design, and the tasks. But I think my hope, at least, is that the IDE becomes a place that is not just about writing code. It becomes a place that is more tailored around, defining what you want. And then the code is kind of an artifact that comes from that.
I'm trying to imagine to myself what that looks like. Also, you're the only person I know that uses a light mode.
I know. I just don't like staring at black all day.
So can we maybe go at a high level? I don't know how detailed you want to get. Granted, everybody can't really see the IDE since we're not screen sharing, but if you can just sort of walk some steps through, let's say you're starting a project completely from scratch and you want to build some, maybe something more complex than a to-do app, who knows? What are the steps? Because now, for instance, I'm looking at the IDE right now, and it looks like you have two different possible ways to start. It gives you the option of either vibe or spec.
That's right.
So one is chatting and one is planning first. So it looks like those are two different ways you can start. Am I reading that correctly?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. So let's say I want to start with the vibe mode.
Yep.
So what am I doing, or what are the steps I'm taking?
That's vibe coding, as I think we're all kind of familiar with now. You're prompting the AI to generate code. It's going to, if you do have any existing code in there, it's going to take a look at that and bring it into the context. But if not, it's just going to start writing code for you.
Right. So there's this chat panel down here. So this is where you start saying, hey, this is my code. I want to add this feature.
That's right.
And make it look like this. This is my stack, and I'm using Vue with, Laravel on the back end with Inertia.js and Tailwind, et cetera. That's my preferred stack.
Yep.
And then it's going to start generating what? Is it going to start generating documents there that with the output,
Yeah. So in vibe mode, it's just going to start writing code. It's that very familiar experience I was saying before, where it's just going to jump right into writing the code. And then you kind of iterate from there of trying to get the AI to update the code into what it is you want it to build. And so I find that that's very useful. I find that the Kiro team uses Kiro to build Kiro. And I find kind of across the team that we tend to jump into vibe mode if we know exactly what we want. We know the code that needs to be written. We're just kind of steering the AI to generate that code, and it's a pretty simple problem. But if we don't know what we want, we don't know exactly what code needs to be written, we'll jump into spec mode, or if it's just a more complex problem. And I think that takes a little bit of intuition today. It kind of takes a little bit of playing, and it requires knowing, what do I think the AI is going to be good at kind of one shot, right? Vibe mode, to get what you want it to be pretty close to one shot. You don't want to have to do a ton of prompt iterations. But if you kind of get this intuition of what is simple enough for me to give to vibe mode, and then anything more complex than that needs to be broken down into individual tasks, or I don't exactly know what I need yet, is a really good starting place for a spec.
And maybe I'm jumping ahead here, but as you're using vibe mode, as Claire said, it reads the files, but you can create steering files, or kind of the same thing you may see in other code editors, like rules files that you can set up so it follows certain patterns as you're vibe coding back and forth. And you can even have Kiro generate these steering files for you to start off with.
Yeah, I find that's really the first thing to do if you're starting in an existing project, is generate the steering files, because it creates this really great summary of the code base and what it is and what it does and what the architecture is, that really helps you to save on context space. So it's not having to read a ton of files every time.
Yeah, and it just outputs better code, I feel like.
Yeah.
So a couple of other questions that I have, I'm going to change the topic a little bit. So both Copilot and Cursor allow you to change the model you're using. I'm assuming that that's the case here too. I can say, I want to use Claude, and then, okay, Claude's not cutting it for me. I want to use GPT. Or is there some kind of auto selection that you do?
Currently, the model that's available in the product is Claude Sonnet 4.
Okay. And I can't change that?
That's right. But
All
we're
right.
currently in preview, so things change.
Right. Yeah, it'll only get better, folks. And then the other question I had was, so both those other systems that I've used, you get for what you pay. So my employer is paying for Copilot. And so that's why I'm using Cursor on my own stuff, is because GitHub didn't give me a good way to differentiate between credits that I pay for and credits that they pay for.
Mm-hmm.
So I've looked at setting up a separate GitHub account just for their stuff. And then anyway, but I guess my question is, so you always have a limit on the number of credits or premium credits you can use. Is that the same for Kiro? I looked at the pricing page and it looks like that's more or less the case. But
yeah, so we have, I guess, 4 different tiers: free, pro, pro plus, power, and very similar to other pricing plans you've seen in the space. You get a certain number of requests or credits that come with that. And then once you go beyond that for the month, you can enable per request or per credit pricing.
And since we are in preview, like Claire said, things are still in flux. Things might be changing. We have been listening really closely. We have a Discord community, and there's Reddit communities, lots of different communities we're looking at, hearing the feedback. We have some really great people in those threads every day listening to that. So we're constantly listening. And so there may be updates, may not be updates, but stay tuned on that and check our blog on all the pricing details. Since it's in preview right now, it's under a wait list. So one thing is, we had lots of great feedback when we first launched it. We had actually so many people want to try it. We put up a wait list. And so we're slowly going through that wait list, adding more people on, and then we'll have more information about that soon.
so one other question that I have with this, I feel like I'm hogging the mic, but I'm going to keep asking my questions. So I'm kind of imagining, so the vibe mode sounds a lot like what I've seen other people doing with the other agent systems, right?
Yep.
And so, I don't necessarily see a major advantage one way or the other between this and those. But then you've got that spec mode, which is something that is different, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm trying to think to myself, okay, when will that really, really deeply pay off? Is it those super complex features or tasks? Are there other things that I'm just not even thinking of where you're going to say, oh, well, we tried this with our, with our workload and it made a major difference here and maybe not so much of a difference on some of the other stuff we did?
I mean, in my experience, I would say I get higher quality code at the end of spec mode. With vibe mode, I find that either I have to put some of the practices in steering rules, like you have to write tests, you have to run those tests. I find that at the end of the spec mode, the AI has already done that for me. And like I was saying, sometimes that's overkill when it puts that in the task list. It says, I'm going to write tests and run tests at every step of these tasks. And sometimes I say, no, just remove all the tests. But when I'm writing something for production, I find that I get higher quality. I find that I don't have to iterate on the code as much once it's finished, especially if I'm steering it along the way. And so I find I end up with, I guess, the right thing the first time more often. And I would say the other one is, I'm trying to think of, we have some examples from the Kiro team using Kiro to build Kiro, especially in some of the code OSS code base. This is a massive 10-year-old code base. And there's some changes that we've had to make in our fork of it. It is really hard to understand that. And so I was thinking about, so many developers having to work through a massive legacy code bases, which we know there are many of in the world, and trying to make a change to one of those code bases is this like incredibly scary thing, right? And our experience was that that process helped us to work with the AI to build an understanding of where those changes needed to be made. And that was because it was able to kind of have this planning stage where it looked through a lot of the code, summarized a lot of the code, figured out all the places that needed to be changed for a particular feature. And that was helpful for the developer learning as well, right? They didn't actually know where all these changes needed to be made. So it was really helpful for that, both the steering files that were generated for that code base, but also just going through this planning phase was really helpful for the developer doing that.
Cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, that would make sense, right? That anything, the more you put into the planning, the better your execution is going to be on the back end.
Yeah.
While at the same time understanding, I just am working through a large project at my day to day, and no matter how much you plan, there's stuff that's going to change.
Oh, yeah.
As you go along, you're going to find out a library doesn't work or doesn't have what you need, or here's a better option, or you have to totally scrap it because of other considerations. So I guess if Kiro can handle the changes, which it seems like it can, where you can go in and say, okay, this change, now I need to rescope this and have this, then yeah, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the fact that you can steer it as it barfs out all that code.
Yeah.
Barf, is that a technical term, Chuck?
It is when I use Cursor.
So just from a training standpoint, I've been poking around. I've just on YouTube, if I search, I'll see a bunch of stuff on Kiro. Do you guys have any particular training videos or stuff in your channel on Kiro? On like video stuff on, okay, here's how you do this.
I could jump in here on this one. Yep. Yeah. So the whole developer advocate team, we're really excited. We've been creating a lot of content. We have our own Twitch channel. So we've been creating weekly, every other week videos. Claire was just actually on one a couple of weeks ago, I believe. And we've been we have a YouTube channel for Kiro too. We have a bunch of videos there. And we have Blue Sky and X account. So yeah, we kind of hit all the channels up to try to get out. And also just going to the Kiro.dev website and then looking at the blog and the docs are a great way to start.
And the Discord community is so active. That's been one of the the nicest surprises almost of this launch. We wanted a way to connect with individual developers, right? But I've been so excited to see really a community forming and people helping each other on the Discord. So that's been amazing to see.
Yeah, I have to say, with most of the things that I've worked on, when the people are great, it makes it just that much better. Like it's fun to deliver something cool, and it's fun to see that it made a difference. But when you're able to connect, I don't know, at least for me, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
So where does this go next? Like, what are you putting into Kiro next? Is there going to be you don't even need a developer anymore mode? I hear people worry about that all the time.
Let's see. I mean, some things that folks have been asking us for, especially in the Discord, we're listening very closely. Things like background tasks. Folks have been asking for where maybe you do want to set it and forget it for a little bit and let it go for 10, 15 minutes. We've been finding that mode is useful when you have a project where the AI can iterate for a long time. So for example, we have a project internally that is written in Rust that was done entirely with AI coding. And the Rust compiler gives such good feedback about the code that you can kind of let the AI go for 10 minutes and it will work out all the bugs because the Rust compiler is giving it such good feedback. And so you can let it go for 10 minutes and the code that comes out might not be, massive amount of code, a blob of code for you to review. But it's gone through so much testing. It's definitely going to it's almost always right when it comes back. But you also don't necessarily want to be, running your local laptop CPU for 100% for that whole time. The folks have been asking us, how can we run it, have the task maybe run on a different machine, like on a EC2 instance, something like that, or just, multiple threads going on in their local laptop. But let's see, some other things that folks have been asking us for.
I'm imagining somebody using that. Kiro, build me Twitter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Somebody already showed me a YouTube clone that they built with Kiro. But let's see what else. There's a lot of opportunity for improvement in the Spec-Driven development. I think we're just getting started there. We have some really interesting ideas about how to prove that the code that was generated actually meets the requirements that you set. I think we've all seen that sometimes models will say that they have met your requirements and they have not met your requirements. So we have some really interesting ideas there.
Yeah, I've experienced that too, where it says, I did it and I tried it and it worked. And no.
Nope.
All right. Well,
so Erik, what is sorry, go ahead.
We're getting close to the time for picks. So we need to start winding down, but that's fine. Yeah. Go ahead and ask your question.
So Erik, what is the AWS channel on YouTube, or what is the channel for Kiro?
Yeah, there's a Kiro channel on YouTube. I think it's Kiro.dev. So if you go to youtube.com/@Kiro.dev, you will
DOT dev. Yeah.
Oh, it's
exactly.
spelled out.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, KIRODOT dev. That's a good call. Yep.
Okay.
And do we get to see your smiling faces on there?
What's that?
Do we get to see your faces on there, or is it somebody else?
If you look there today, as of this recording, I'm not sure when this is going out, but as of today, yeah, I just did a video with James Ward. It's extending Kiro's capabilities with MCP. We didn't even get into this, but it does have MCP capabilities, which is, I'm sure you guys done shows on it.
Dangerous.
But yeah, we go through in the latest video on the channel on how to add some fun MCP servers, how to set that up. So yeah, and there's a lot of interviews, a lot of great information on there to check out.
Wow, and you're dressed up too. It looks good.
Yeah, I got to wear the sports jacket occasionally. Not always just wearing the
that whole black on black look. That's really good, man.
All right, well, let's go ahead and do some picks because, like I said, I have a hard stop. So, we'll go ahead and start with Steve. Steve, what are your picks?
All right, so don't have anything else outside of the dad jokes of the week. So I'll dive right into those. So someone threw a can of soda at me the other day, but I'm okay. It was a soft drink. Simple question. Couple questions here. Why do hummingbirds hum? Because they don't know the words. Thank you. And finally, another question. Why do people say tuna fish sandwich? Nobody says chicken bird sandwich. Those are the dad jokes of the week.
All right. You said you didn't have anything else?
That's correct.
All right. I'm going to go next. So, Claire, you haven't been on the show before, so I'll just explain. We just shout out about whatever. And so Steve shares the best of the dad jokes, and then, we'll do other things. So I usually pick a board game or a card game. And so I'm going to pick a game called Infiltrators. Infiltrators came out in 2013 or 2023, sorry. And it's done by Pandasaurus. They have other games. It is a 2 to 5 player card game. And what it is you have a certain number of, I guess, spies that you're trying to, or mafia members that you're trying to pinpoint. And so what they are is they're face down cards in front of each player. And so as you look at there's a delay in my video, it's driving me crazy. As you play, then what you can do is so I can give a clue on my cards or somebody else's cards. But if I play it on somebody else's card, then I get to draw a card back to my hand. Otherwise, I have to take a turn to get more cards eventually. And so usually you're cluing other people's cards, but sometimes you clue your own because you know what yours is and nobody else does. And so, then you can kind of give people instead of them guessing over and over again, you can just basically tell them what it is based on what they already know. And so if I put a card on somebody else's, they can turn it one way or the other that says there's nothing in common with this card or there's something in common with this card. And it basically what it can have in common is either the numbers on the card. And so let's say that you have the 15 that you play over there. Well, the 15 shows all of the factors or multiples of the number, right? So if you play a 3, it has 3, 6, 9, 12, and 15. If you play the 15, it has 1, 3, 5, and 15. And so if my card is a 1, 3, 5, or 15, I don't think there were ones. Anyway, if it has any of those numbers, then I'll put it down and say there's something in common. Or if it's the same color, something in common. But if there's nothing in common, then you can eliminate a whole bunch of cards. You say it's not blue. Anyway, so it's fun. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to expose what all of the cards are. And so one of the things you can do on your turn is instead of putting down a clue, you can say it has a little gun prop and you're supposed to execute the card. But we always just say that one's the 3 of red. And then, whoever had it flips it over and says you're right. Or if you're wrong, then there are consequences for that. But anyway, it's a fun game. Board Game Geek weights it at 2.11. That's out of 5. And so it's pretty approachable for people, for the casual gamer. Sometimes I like the deep dark games that are like 3 or 3.5 in weight. But, if you just want to pick up a game you can play in a half hour, that's a great one. And it's a deck of cards. So anyway, not a poker deck, but it has its own deck. But anyway, super fun. And so I'm going to pick that. We played it, I don't know, like 6 times. The last time I got together with my buddies, we get together and we play every Wednesday. So we're going to play tonight. We'll see what we play.
What's the name of the game again?
Infiltrators.
Infiltrators
is spelled like traitors, like people who betray people. So it's not the typical spelling of the word. And then I'm also going to pick, while I was in Atlanta last week, I was in the hotel trying to just relax. And so I was looking for a show to watch, and I picked up The Twisted Tale of Amanda Knox. And Amanda Knox is an American student who was studying in Perugia. When I was a missionary in Italy, I didn't live that far from Perugia, actually. Anyway, and that's been kind of fun for me because like half the show's in Italian with subtitles because the Italians are speaking Italian. But anyway, so she gets arrested for murder. And so they're kind of going through the trial. I think there are 5 episodes out as we record this. And it comes out every Tuesday or Wednesday. But yeah, really, really enjoying that. And so I'm going to pick that show. I've also been watching The Terminal List, and that has Chris Pratt in it. That one's a little bit more violent, but I'm enjoying that one as well. Twisted Tale of Amanda Knox is on Hulu, which is included in our Disney. I've been watching it on Disney Plus. And then A Terminal List is on Amazon Prime. So yeah, I'll pick all of those. I'm trying to think what else, but I'm going to be speaking at Commit Your Code conference at the end of September. And I believe this will come out before then. So if you're going to be there, come find me. And then on the next week, I'm going to be at Rocky Mountain Ruby Conference in Boulder. Or no, that's 2 weeks later. But anyway, so I'm going to be around. If you're in Atlanta, Prize Picks is based in Atlanta, so I wind up out there. So just email me and say, hey, I'm in Atlanta. Let me know when you're coming out next, and I'll let you know. But yeah, those are my picks. Erik, what are your picks?
I will pick. So last night I went to the movie theater with my wife, and I guess Hamilton has a 10-year anniversary movie that you can watch. So we watched the 10-year anniversary Hamilton movie that included like 10, 15 minutes at the beginning of like interviews with the cast and everything. So that was kind of a fun evening to check it out. Of course, you can get Hamilton on Disney Plus, the movie, but it was nice to like check that out in the movie theater, which I've never watched Hamilton. I've watched it in Broadway, but I have not watched it in a movie theater, so that was fun. So that's my first pick. And then I guess the second pick would be, I just went to Singapore for an AWS event a few weeks ago. Man, I love Singapore. I just love the food, the hawker stations, all the amazing gardens. So I highly recommend people who will want to travel to a nice destination. I went to Gardens by the Bay, which had this crazy light show. They do it like once every day or twice a day. And so, yeah, great weather, great food, highly worth checking out.
Awesome. Claire, what are your picks?
Let's see. So I just finished a book called Custodians of Wonder by Elliot Stein. Ancient Customs, Profound Traditions, and the Last People Keeping Them Alive. And so this guy went and found people who are kind of the end of the line. There's a woman in Italy that makes a certain kind of pasta that no one else in the world knows how to make. Guy somewhere in Africa that a certain story has been passed down for thousands of years, and he has to figure out who's the next person to pass it down to. So super, super interesting book. Let's see. I have also been on the hunt for free public APIs for demos. And there is one that I like that is ICANN has dad joke.
Yes. Thank you. I have actually used that. I'll give you a real quick backstory. I did a video for View Mastery a few years ago. And the way that they asked everybody to do a demo project. So what I did was a View app that randomly pulled from that API and displayed a dad joke on the screen. So yes, that's great.
So that's my second pick.
Awesome. All right. If people want to, we've talked about like the Discord and the YouTube channel, but if people want to connect directly with either of you, how do they find you?
I'm on Blue Sky, Clare Liguori, and LinkedIn.
Yep. And you can find me at Erik, CHERIKCH on all the socials, or just Erik Hanchett on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Go ahead and wrap up. Till next time, max out.